Vision Synthezoid Avenger is right up my alley. Get it out, have a ton of free or cheap instants to build it up and protect it. As a commander, Vision is colorless, meaning your options for cheap or free instants are limited. So I'm attempting a deck featuring Vision as the secret commander, but also as a Voltron secret commander. To make the secret Voltron work, I have chosen Iron Man Titan of Innovation. A 5-mana value, Izzet 4/4 with flying and haste. And when it attacks, you create a treasure token, then you may sacrifice a non-creature artifact. If you do, you may search your library for an artifact card with a mana value equal to 1 plus the mana value of the sacrificed artifact's mana value. You take that tutored artifact and put it into play tapped. There are two primary reasons why I think Iron Man is really the only commander for this type of deck with Vision as a secret Voltron commander. The first being is it has really good spells that you can cast cheaply or for free. This means that you can advance your Voltron strategy on Vision while having free spells to build Vision up or phase him out to protect him at the same time. The second being that Iron Man can tutor up Vision directly, meaning you can afford to run less cards to make your secret commander consistently show up and run more cards that behoove a Voltron strategy instead. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below if you think there might be a better commander for a secret Voltron Vision deck. Now this deck has a few paths to victory, the first being the Voltron strategy with Vision Synthezoid Avenger. Equip it, buff it, protect it, and get it in for big damage. And since we're going to be running Voltron goodness, we can actually just add Godo and Helm of the Host for a relatively low weight win condition, meaning we don't really need to build around it. It's just a plan B that's there with little to no cards dedicated to getting it going. The second path to victory lies in the ramp package. Iron Man needs 3 mana value artifacts to search for Vision. Additionally, 3 mana ramp will curve you directly into Iron Man on turn 4, meaning we can actually run more 3 mana value ramp than I would generally run. So we can also win via the bobblehead package. They can be sacked to tutor up Vision, ramp into Iron Man on curve, and if things go sideways, you can tutor those out, start winning through sheer bobblehead value. Be sure to like the video and subscribe for more unique decks and unique deck boxes, and let's break down Vision Mans. Vision Synthezoid Avenger is a 4 mana value 3/3 flyer. It's an artifact creature that's also a robot hero. And whenever a player casts a spell, if it isn't that player's turn, either put a +1/+1 counter on Vision or Vision phases out. Now Vision isn't the fastest grower or shower, but what it does have is crazy self-protection. Just think about it, if someone tries to remove it on not their turn, the worst case scenario is Vision just phases out and we go again next turn. That's probably its biggest strength as a secret Voltron. It just never dies. We'll start the ramp with the obvious inclusions: Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Izzet Signet, and Talisman of Creativity. Then we go on to the bobbleheads, which if you don't know are all 3 mana value rocks, providing any color of mana, but also each of the 7 bobbleheads has a unique activated ability that will scale up with the number of bobbleheads you have in play. A few key bobbleheads are Agility, which can make Vision or any Voltroned up creature more or less unblockable. Endurance and Charisma bobbleheads will work pretty well together, making a bunch of tokens and then giving those tokens big attack buffs. Intelligence is a really good card draw engine if you can get it to about 3 or 4 bobbleheads, and the Strength bobblehead will let you stack even more counters onto Vision. All of the bobbleheads have upsides in the right scenarios and can provide a ton of value. To round out the ramp, we run Cursed Mirror, Misleading Signpost, Glittering Stockpile, and Forger's Foundry. Now these all have some utility by themselves, but I chose these over other forms of ramp because they are colored artifacts, and since a lot of the freebies will require exiling a red or blue card from your hand, having some extra colored cards is an important tactic to our strategy. The key to this is that you have tons of artifacts at 3 mana value, which are okay sacrificing to Iron Man to get Vision. But what about when you have Vision out? Well, now you can go get one of these baddies. Helm of the Host is a Voltron classic, and again, we also have Godo, so this is kind of a no-brainer. Hammer of Nazan is another Voltron staple, and Heartseeker will give you some tutorable interaction. Magitech Skies can be good forcing a problematic creature on the board to block, but this is mostly there because it automatically attaches. We'll have a section of cut cards later in the video, and you can probably replace this with some of the equipment from there. Lastly, we have Mjolnir's Stormhammer, which is an auto-equip, but can also deal some good table-wide damage and lock down problematic creatures. The second group is Voltron equipment that costs 5 mana, allowing another tier of Iron Manable Voltron gear. Scytheclaw can be a threat on its own, next to Vision giving you multiple threats on the board. Nazgul Battle Mace turns Vision into a mini Eldrazi disaster machine. And both Genji Glove and Hexplate Wallbreaker will unlock extra combat steps. This package will serve as support for the Voltron gear, including the previously mentioned Godo, but it also includes some equipment versatility in Dalico's Crafter of Wonders to make it easier to cast or equip cards, and gives haste and a flying buff to equipped creatures. Similarly, Fury and Wild Rose will give your equipped creatures haste, but also make you temporary copies of your equipment. And honestly, I'm sure something crazy is going to happen with Furion and Helm of the Host, but I'm too stupid to know exactly what will happen. I guess we'll find out together. Lastly, we have Magnetic Theft, which is just some equipment shenanigans, but it being an instant and costing only 1 mana means it works super well as a cheap card to potentially save or buff your Vision. Now, to get the most out of Vision, we're going to stock up on free spells. The first group aren't really free, but will let you untap all the lands that you use to cast it. Unwind, Snap, Frantic Search, they're all solid effects at ultimately 0 cost. Gitaxian Probe and Mental Misstep are Phyrexian mana users and thus more or less free. Gitaxian Probe is a sorcery, so you won't really ever trigger Vision with it, but I still think it's fine enough to run. You could definitely swap it out with one of the cut cards later on. Downhill Charge, Daze, and Crash all require some land stuff, either sacrificing a land or returning a land to your hand. A free Force Spike or Shatter is pretty good, but Downhill Charge is actually kind of interesting, especially when you consider buffing Vision for a lethal kill. It will mostly depend on how many mountains you have in play, but still a free +4/+0 ain't bad. Also, I run a pair of traps and not just the ones on my shoulders. Mindbreak and Whiplash seemed easy enough to trigger, but also seem like a fair price for their effect if you need to hardcast them. I'm not too familiar with traps, so if you have better trap suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments again and I'll pin something so future generations can see how dumb I am. Then we get to the exile cards, where we exile a card in our hand. Snapback, Pyrokinesis, Misdirection, Force of Will, and Force of Negation, and honestly this is a really expensive section, but it could be way worse. This deck already comes in at around 550-ish bucks, and a lot of it is in this section, and it could be even more. With some of the cut cards, you will see that it can get very expensive. Now, suffice to say, cards that are free to cast and generally very good are highly valued, so it kind of makes sense. I will have some alternatives in that cut card section if you are more budgetly inclined. Most of the freebies are interaction, but this section will feature strictly interactive cards that will cost a little bit of mana. We'll start with some counterspells in An Offer You Can't Refuse, Flusterstorm, and Swan Song, all 1 mana counterspells that punch above their mana value. We then run some cheap removal in Rapid Hybridization, Pongify, and Reality Shift. And then we run some artifact removal in Vandal Blast and Untimely Malfunction. What would a Voltron deck be without double striking out of nowhere? And this deck will run 3 cards to do just that. Unleash Fury, Twinferno, and Temur Battle Rage. And before you say it, yes, I know Unleash Fury isn't technically double striking, but you know deep in your heart it really is. There's a few blind spots the deck has, and these all kind of cover those bases. I do run Enter the Enigma to give Vision another level of evasion. I also run Blasphemous Act as a larger scale wiping effect, and when I do cast it, it will be a very cheap spell. And finally, I run Scour for Scrap as another way to search for Vision or return him from the graveyard. We don't rely a ton on sculpting since our plan is to directly tutor out Vision, so what we do run is impactful. Obviously, Rhystic Study and Archmage Emeritus are really good, and for a cheaper, quicker way to sculpt, we run Expressive Iteration. Seat of the Synod and Great Furnace are not really utility lands, but they can be sacrificed to Iron Man to get your Soul Ring, so that's something. Now, of these lands, you really only need Rogue's Passage, Academy Ruins, and probably Dust Bowl. Rogue's Passage will help with Vision Evasion, Academy Ruins will bring your Vision back, and Dust Bowl will let you play fair against broken lands. You can't go wrong with Mistrise Village just because there is so little drawback to running it over an island. Shinka the Blood-Soaked Keep is really nice because it can give your Vision first strike, or give it to Iron Man, and that could be pretty relevant in a combat scenario. And Glasspool Mimic is just one of my favorite cards. It's super versatile. It's a land, it's whatever's on the board, it's just really good. For the land base, I think you can realistically just get away with your preferred 2-color mana base. If you have cheaper lands in the Izzet colors, run those. If you have the more expensive ones, I would run those. Now we get to the pile of cards that didn't quite make the cut. Lizard Blades was going to be the 4th double strike card, but the casting cost, in addition to the equip cost, kind of put it more on the expensive edge of what I would like to spend for that effect. Gutshot is an alternate to something like Gitaxian Probe, or if you just want another instant speed freebie. Pact of Negation and Deflecting Swat are more freebies, but also up the cost of the deck by like $100. Also, Pact of Negation has that 5 mana upkeep cost, and I don't really want to be spending 5 mana on my own upkeep. Rewind was a potential freebie, but the initial amount of 4 mana was a lot. Then we run a plenty of counterspells already. I felt this was probably not super needed, so it's in the cut card section. The shoals seemed okay, just a bit too situational and not enough bang for your buck, but they are generally free, so if you have them, it's always something you can probably just throw in. Counterspell seems fine if you don't like the conditional counterspells like Swan Song. It's not the end of the world to run this at just 1 more mana. And I like Lightning Bolt. I don't run it, I might end up running it. For now, it's on the bench. I wanted to run Slip Out of the Back as kind of a cheeky nod to it having the Vision ability, but it turns out you can just run any other instant at 1 mana value and still get the Vision effect from Vision. So, meh. Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots were initial inclusion, as that's kind of the Voltron thing to do, but the whole point of the deck is that Vision has built-in protection, so these seemed ultimately redundant. There were initially a few more equipment-focused cards, but this deck really isn't about equipment. You just want to tutor out specific ones with Iron Man. Of the ones that missed the cut, Gilgamesh Master-at-Arms would probably be the closest to making the cut, and it's probably a good replacement if you just don't want to run the Godo Infinite package. I had like a million 3 mana value rocks before I decided to go with just the bobblehead strategy. If you want to eschew getting some head, feel free to run a few of these, of which I will point out a few of my favorites. I like Laser Screwdriver and Sonic Screwdriver just for the flexibility that they both provide. Honored Heirloom can do some work manipulating graveyards. Etheric Amplifier seems like it would be good to get a bunch of counters on Vision all at once, and Hot Dog Cart actually came really close to making the cut, simply because it will ramp to Iron Man naturally, but you can use the food token that this makes to keep your treasures around, which I think could be significant early enough in the game. Archmage of Runes was going to act like a second Archmage Emeritus, but it was slightly too expensive, and too many of the spells I run are already free or cheap. Emery Lurker of the Lock was there to bring Vision back. If you are worried about this, you can easily slot Emery back into the 100, but I do think initially Vision has enough protection on his own to not really worry about that. There were a lot of utility lands to pick from because Izzet has really good utility lands. Odawaris Soaring City is kind of the best one, but it's also kind of the most boring one, and it doesn't really synergize with the deck, so I cut it. It's totally fine to run it if you want. I do like Spikefield Hazard as kind of another gut shot. Making sure you hit your lands is important, and if you draw it late game, an easy 1 mana instant will help out with your visioning. Similarly, Kazul's Fury is nice to get the land again, but flinging a giant vision, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I did think about Moon Silver Spear as a longer game creature generator. It doesn't really give any buff to Vision, and it doesn't automatically attach, so that ultimately left it on the cutting card section. And last but not least is Haughty Jin, just as a big boy that can provide an alternate threat to Vision. It just seemed like it was kind of there, and it didn't fit thematically other than I run a lot of instants and spells, and this isn't an instant or spell type deck, so it got cut. Oh, and while not exactly cut cards, if you would rather have a super dope win condition in the deck, you can take out some cards to run Teferi Mage of Zhalfir, Cloudstone Curio, and 2 of the original Kobolds. Use the Kobolds to infinitely bounce each other, make Vision infinitely big, and Bob's your uncle. Your opening hand generally wants to look like 3 lands, a ramp, and maybe some light interaction. The bulk of your ramp is on 3, so you can spend the first 2 turns using your cheap interaction to kind of mold the state of the game as you begin to cast Iron Man and tutor for Vision. This also means that if you need to run more lands that would come into play tapped more often, you won't be as punished as you're not really doing much the first and second turn. Your early game really is just getting to Iron Man on 4, which also means Vision on 4. From that point, you want to really make sure Vision sticks around, and slowly but surely grow him to become an impossible threat to remove. The decklist will be in the description below, along with some affiliate links to support the channel. And unfortunately, that decklist comes in at about $550. Iron Man is pretty expensive, and a lot of the free spells are just really expensive, and depending on what lands you're running, could get potentially even higher. Now, the deck qualifies as bracket 3 due to 2 game changers, Force of Will and Heuristic Study. So if you swap those out for any alternates, you could actually drop this down to bracket 2. If you're looking for a cool deck box to go with your totally cool and innovative deck, feel free to check out this playlist of all my reviews of 3D printed deck boxes, subscribe for more videos like this. If you liked the video, feel free to slap it with a like, and thank you for watching. I will see you around.